Right. Yeah, thank you for the kind words, Rob. I'm really happy to be here. So my name is Bas Verkijk, and I'm all the way from the Netherlands, yeah. And although I experienced that a lot of Americans tend to think that the Netherlands is the capital of Amsterdam, it's actually the other way around, but I'm sure you all know that. Yeah, so anyway, I'm really happy to be here, that the DAC committee gave me the opportunity to present my story here. We just heard the great story of John. I very much enjoyed it. I very much agree with it, actually. And I think my story fits quite well with what he was telling. Because actually what we did was also just playing around, making big toys, and doing fun stuff with it, which in the end also drove innovation. So I think it fits quite well with it. And yeah, my story, I hope you will enjoy it. It's about a bunch of young, ambitious, and highly inexperienced people that once had the crazy idea to travel around the world in 80 days on a completely self-developed electric motorcycle. And in this presentation, I will tell you a little bit about how we managed to build this bike, of course, about the experience we had during that world tour, and also the things we did afterwards, so founding a company and moving on with the knowledge we gained during this project. And before I will do that, I will first give you a small teaser, a small video, to give you an idea about what this is all about.
The world's first traveling electronic motorcycles.
80 dagen reisden ze de wereld over. Een team van 23 studenten.
Technischский университет в Eindhoven. 电力交通工具正快速普及。
Die ze zelf ontwikkelden.
In 80 days around the world, recharging our batteries locally. And also we have the opportunity to organize special events.
So it's about innovation and creativity. And I think with this project you are clarifying that it is possible to change things.
They want to show the world, students and others,
that electromobility works. Also in the desert in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, you can drive electrically without a problem.
We zijn ook in Kirgizië geweest. Daar hadden ze nog nooit gehoord van vervoer op batterijen.
You can see that twinkle in the eyes of every child, just in awe. I look forward to that the young kids that you're able to touch upon this trip, that they'll be driving vehicles like that now.
Onze auto's, Jad, welkom in San Francisco.
Het gaat er helemaal niet om wat jij vindt.
Chaos.
Kut, jongen. Dat is zo zonde.
En dan doet hij het weer. Supermooi.
We zijn
holy fuck.
Zo'n kutdag als vandaag doet dat echt heel veel.
Jongens, we staan schouder aan schouder. Kom.
Dan wil ik bij deze 80 dagen rondreis van start verklaren.
We want to show that this is actually the future, that we should stop using fuels and start driving electrically.
We gaan nu bedankt. Doei.
Yeah, so as you can see, there were quite some obstacles along the road. You also got a small lesson in Dutch, so I hope you learned something about it. Yeah, so, is it working? Yeah, so this actually is already quite some time ago, a few years ago. And this entire journey started 2 years before that, in 2014. So when we were with like 23 students, highly inexperienced, we just finished or not even finished our bachelor programs. And then we came up with this crazy idea because we were done with all these lecturers, writing these exams. We wanted to use our knowledge in a practical way. So we thought we were inspired by the novel, the famous novel of Jules Verne, of course, who I think is about 500 years ago now, inspired a lot of people that it was possible to go around the world in 80 days. And I think right now that's not a big deal anymore. But we thought maybe if we do it in an electric way, we could also inspire people like he did a long time ago. So that's when we gathered ourselves, united ourselves as Storm Eindhoven, and we started organizing this tour and also working on this bike. So the idea, going around the world in 80 days on an electric motorcycle. And a motorcycle capable of doing that didn't exist yet. an electric motorcycle capable of doing that. So we had to develop it all by ourselves. Because the route, it's about, we had to go through 16 different countries, about 23,000 kilometers, through Europe, Central Asia, China, and in the end, the US. So with this challenge, with this adventure ahead of us, we started designing. But like I said, we were ambitious, but we were highly inexperienced. So, okay, we had no experience whatsoever with building a bike, with getting all the financials together, with organizing a world tour. So we had to start from zero. And I think if you look at the first designs of our motorbike, you are quite sure. Oh, I think I moved too far. So yeah, like I said, we were inexperienced, but we had the dreams. So we gathered ourselves, and we had different dreams in our team to be, that's why we came to this project. So of course, building a motorcycle is something we haven't done before. So that's some dream some of our members had why they joined this project. Of course, making a world trip in your early 20s is also quite a dream for a lot of people, why they came to the project. Doing something entrepreneurial, something new, working in a team is important, drive for our members. And of course, last but not least, the sustainability. We thought the transition towards electric vehicles is going way too slow, and we want to accelerate that by inspiring a lot of people that it's already possible to drive electrically everywhere. And that's how we in the end came up with the vision of going around the world electrically and showing everyone around that it's possible to go electrically everywhere, and going around the world in such a short period of time, completely without any fossil fuels. But yeah, this vision is nice, these dreams are nice, but like I said, we need to get started. And the first designs of our motorbike were quite odd. So if you look at those pictures, I think you can tell you will not go around the world with a bike like that. So so that's when we started. So it didn't look that good at that moment. But then the nice thing is that if you're young, you have these high goals, your learning curve is quite steep. So actually, after a few months already, we came up with the first designs, and it looked much better. So this actually looked more like a bike that would maybe have a chance of going around the world in such a short time. And it actually became more concrete after we made a one-to-one mock-up of it. So this is just a version made of foam. Actually, a lot of people thought we could actually drive with it, just like the man who's sitting on it right now. But it wasn't the case. But it really helped in also people getting more trust in what we were doing, because people could actually touch it, they could sit on it. So that really helped in building trust for people that needed to help us. And of course, this all changed when we were able to really make the first prototype and to unveil it to the world. And this was actually quite a big deal, because this was the first electric touring motorbike. So the first electric motorbike capable of driving long distances. And it was first a prototype, but it was of course supposed to ride, but there was one problem, and it didn't ride. And I remember that we were in a big television show. I think about 1 million people were watching. And the presenter asked, can I start the bike? And we had to come up with this excuse that we forgot the key or something, because it didn't ride. But of course, it wasn't a big failure to us, because we never had even built a bike, and now we had the experience of building a bike. So we actually learned a lot from it. And besides, we just never told anyone that it wasn't riding, so people were thinking we already built a bike. So we built some trust for people that were supposed to help us. And also it inspired us, and it learned us that we needed to connect a lot of more people, partners to us. So we needed to ask for more help. For this first prototype, we actually thought we could do it all by ourselves. But in the end, we learned that we just need to also have a lot of people, partners, companies supporting us. And that's also why I really like the next picture, because this shows all the companies that worked together with us on the bike. So in total, we had more than 150 companies from Holland, but also from Europe, from the entire world, supporting us in developing this bike. And I think that's also really cool, because you're just a bunch of young people with a great idea. And if you're really dedicated to do that, there are a lot of people that actually want to support you. And that's really what I learned from doing this project. So with the help of all these companies, and by working incredibly hard, of course, eventually we managed to make a bike that actually could ride. And we were really proud to show that. So during the unveiling, we let it ride immediately. So with this bike, we thought we were ready to do the job. So on August, and this is what the development process looks like. Quite a good improvement, I would say, from a bike that was never supposed to ride, from a bike that was supposed to ride but never rode, to a bike that actually was capable of riding. But if you look into this bike, like, how did we come up with this design? Of course, it looks a little bit unconventional, and of course, there's an idea behind it. Because, like I said, we had to develop a bike that didn't exist yet, because we had to develop a bike that was capable of driving around the world in 80 days. And that's quite a niche market, I would say. So there are no bikes yet that could do that. So I think we had to cover like 500, sometimes even up to 800 kilometers a day. So we needed to make a bike capable of doing that. So of course, the range is quite important first. We needed to make a bike that could actually cover these 500 to 800 kilometers a day. And that's quite a challenge using an electric bike, I would say, because you have a limited space to put batteries in. Of course, the comfort is important, because also the one sitting on the bike need to be able to cover 500 to 800 kilometers on a day. Performance is cool. Is important. We wanted to show how cool electric vehicles can be. So of course, it needs to be a bike that has some performance. Also, that's also why we chose to use a motorbike to do the job. And it needs to be safe and reliable, because it could not break down after a few days. Right, so going to the first requirement, the range, how we managed to do that. Yeah, actually, we managed to put a 30 kilowatt-hour battery pack on this bike, and that's quite a lot. If you see that most cars have maybe 60 kilowatt-hour, but yeah, that's a car. It's quite a bigger vehicle. So what we basically did is we started with the battery pack. So we just started with thinking, okay, this is the energy that we need to cover those distances, to cover 400-kilometer range, and we built the entire bike behind it. So that's how we came up with this idea of the battery pack consisting out of 24 of those separate smaller modules that you could take out easily. Because, of course, 400 kilometers, that's not 500, that's not 800 kilometers, and that's what we needed to cover each day. So we need to be able to replace the batteries quite fast after we ran out of energy. So in a few minutes, we could just take out all the batteries and replace them with charged ones. And that's how we could actually cover 800 kilometers per day. But we also made it modular, because like we had some roads on, for example, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan. I can tell you, those weren't the best roads. And like a 30 kilowatt-hour battery pack, I can also tell you that's quite heavy. So in total, the bike could go up to about 370 kilograms. And that's quite heavy for a bike. So, and half of the weight came from the battery pack. So that's why we made it modular. So for some roads that weren't that good, we could just take out, for example, half of the batteries, and then the center of gravity would lower, and then we had, of course, a little bit less range, but it was easier to handle. All right. Yeah, so then the second requirement, the comfort. So what we did here was making our own suspension. So actually what we did with this bike is making it all by ourselves. Looking back, that was quite a bad choice, because that made it really complicated. But now looking back afterwards is also quite cool to say, of course. So the suspension we made all by ourselves, and it's based on the BMW principle for the riders amongst you. And actually BMW stole it from a guy named Hosek. So we just call it the Hosek suspension. And actually the principle is that you have two of those wishbones that make sure that all the vibrations of the road are actually disconnected from your steering wheel, that you don't feel the vibrations of the road, which of course increases your comfort. And of course, an electric vehicle, an electric motorcycle is just silent. Also, a lot of riders amongst you think that's a bad thing, but in the end, for the comfort, it's really good. All right, so the performance. And also here, we made our own gearbox, which is quite also an innovative gearbox. And it actually has two gears, or actually one gear. And in the first gear, which is the acceleration mode, it just has a smaller gear, which enables really large acceleration. And in the second gear, it's actually basically doing nothing. So it just turns with the motor, which makes sure you can use the efficiency of the electric motor, which is why it says 100% efficiency. And finally, the safety and reliability, which is made, I think, the biggest challenge if you have like 23 unexperienced students making a bike. And actually, we did that in the battery design. And we had also the batteries were entirely developed by ourselves. First of all, the PCB, we needed to design it by ourselves because enabling the modularity and the swappable stuff in the bike that didn't exist yet, so we needed to develop it by ourselves. And we used some special material, phase change material, that could actually absorb a lot of energy as soon as something would go bad with the battery. So that's actually quite a nice thing we did. First, of course, we needed to get the license plate, so we needed to some homologation, and that also makes sure that the bike needs to meet some certain requirements, some certain specifications, and some degree of safety and reliability. And we just thought, okay, we just developed 2 bikes, then if one breaks down, we can just use the other one, which turned out to be not a bad decision, but I will come to that later. So with this bike that we developed all by ourselves, and after first having a bike that didn't ride, we eventually had a bike that ride and we thought was capable of actually doing the job. The license plate we got perfectly in time, 3 days before the start, so we were all good to go. And the start it really looked like what we envisioned it to be. So like a full square in the city center of Eindhoven, our hometown, people saying goodbye to us, and we were ready to realize our dream, the thing that we worked 2 years for, and right now it could actually happen. And of course, we were confident that the bike was capable of doing that, but actually after only 1 day, this is what it looks like. So another lesson in Dutch, this basically means it's the biggest news agency in Holland, so that was nice, of course, that they covered us. But the headline says, electric motorbike on the world tour already done after 2 days. So that wasn't the headline we were hoping for, of course. So, and yeah, looking back, I can also laugh about it, but by then, of course, it wasn't looking that good because it broke down after 1 day already. It was in the inverter, so that's converting the DC to AC for the motor. That's the one device we didn't develop by ourselves, so you can see you need to trust your own strengths. But we had no clue what was the issue. And actually, that's also funny because by then we were saying to the press, just a motorbike broke down. But yeah, like you saw, we had 2 motorbikes, but actually the one motorbike that even never drove. So we just started the tour with 1 motorbike that was actually capable of riding. The other one didn't even work, but we just took it with us in the van. And that's actually a quite nice story because in the end we visited the manufacturer of that inverter, which was some sort of luck for us, which was close to where we actually stopped. And the other motorbike that didn't work also had a problem with the inverter, so that was really our headache component. And in the end, we didn't manage to fix the bike that actually was always riding and always made to do the tour. But the motorbike that never ever did some tests, they managed to fix that bike. And that's in the end the bike that did the entire tour. So that's a bike that had no tests whatsoever, never ever overdrive. And that eventually covered 23,000 kilometers without any issues. So that's quite a miracle, I would say, for us. So yeah, after we managed to fix the bike that never ever drove, it was just enjoying the amazing scenery, of course. We visited a lot of countries I never ever heard of before, so countries such as Kyrgyzstan. If you don't have any holiday plans, you should go to Kyrgyzstan. It's really the most amazing country ever seen. And yeah, countries such as China. Of course, in the US, we visited the nice places in the US. A lot of places that maybe people go two in their entire life, we pressed that into 80 days. And that was, of course, amazing. And of course, there were still some challenges because the bike was now working, but it is an electric bike and you need to charge that. And we had a lot of batteries with us, so we needed to charge a lot of batteries. And of course, we organized the tour on beforehand, so most of the people we visited, they knew we were coming, but they actually underestimated the number of batteries we have taken with us. So it was actually quite a challenge still to charge everywhere. And there's also gives some nice stories because, for example, in Kazakhstan, there was still some electric guy like rearranging some cables so that we could charge. And the best example is maybe in China, where there's a guy illegally tapping off some of the wiring from a phone cable so that we could charge and continue our trip the next day. And I think that's really nice because that really illustrates like that people along the road really wanted us to continue. So they really wanted us to go on with the tour. So it became their tour as well. And that's also illustrate like the next pictures. So we came there just asking to charge, but in the end, people all over the world, they were so honored that we chose their city, their country, their place to charge. So they made huge events out of it. So we had huge crowds waiting for us. We had press everywhere. We could tell our story daily to a really large public. And of course, that was really cool because that was the entire idea of our tour, just inspiring people what it's like to ride an electric bike. And there were people that never even heard about electric mobility whatsoever. So that really made our trip worthwhile. And this is also a nice example of China. So we only were there or these places for a few hours because we only had 80 days, so we needed to move on like quite fast. But like for the few hours we were there, they built like these huge stages for us just to present our story, and I think that's really, really cool. And talking about hospitality, it's actually quite nice. Of course, we also needed to sleep there, and we were 23 people, so it's also quite a big deal to make sure these people have a place to stay. And of course, we were students, we didn't have any money, so we just needed to use the hospitality of all our people to stay. And that, like, for example, one day we had like this huge villa that a guy, he only heard of us like that day and said, okay, come on, all 23 of you, just stay at my place. And then literally the day after, we needed to stay in a gym, and we were woken up by the volleyball girls that needed to practice at 7 a.m. So, but it didn't matter. It was really like everyone was just helping with their own means, and I think that's really cool. So, with the help of all these people, and of course with a little bit of luck and some small miracles, we eventually managed to come home after 80 days after we started. And I think that's really cool, and that also ended a large journey that wasn't only taking 80 days, but was actually 2 years. And it's a nice example of how just a bunch of people that didn't know each other, that had no experience, they just learned how to do it, and then in the end actually did it. And that was, it was really an amazing journey for all of us. And that's, I think, it's now 2 years ago. And when we came back, we had this 2 years. We didn't study at all, but we were all students. So actually we needed to finish our study programs again. But that really feels like you're going back like 2 steps in where you were. Because you were doing like this amazing project, putting all your effort in it, and then you have to go back to study again, which is not really what we liked. So, we're actually, by then, we were also approached by a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations with the question if we could support them in building an electric vehicle. Of course, by then, a few years ago, it's quite relevant knowledge that not everyone possesses. So, so we thought we need to do something with it. And one of the first companies that approached us was Keynote, which is a Dutch motorbike manufacturer that makes motorbikes especially for the African market. At first we thought, okay, what do we need to do at the African market? But also it's quite an interesting market because we showed that it's possible to drive electrically everywhere. So this was actually the perfect opportunity to prove once again that it is actually possible. So they asked us if we could make an electric version of their bike, which is so specifically made for the African market, and make it into an electric one that could be used over there. So we thought, okay, this means we can stop our studies again. We can earn some money by an organization that wants to pay us to make an electric bike, and we can prove once again that it's possible to drive electrically everywhere. So we took on the challenge. So this is the bike that we needed to convert, and the challenge was so converting this bike into an electric one, which basically meant taking out the engine and replacing it with batteries and an electric motor. So that's what we did. And the result is quite nice, I would say. So this bike, I think we managed to build a few months ago. We finished this one. And we will now test this bike in Africa. And yeah, let's see whether it works. So this is actually also the first prototype, and this time the prototype actually rides, so we're also increasing in what we can do. And the idea is now to make a new version of it that can actually be sold, and not only in Africa, but of course a cheap, reliable electric motorcycle is actually interesting everywhere in the world. So that's quite exciting times ahead. But at the same time we were developing this motorbike, we also experienced that there are a lot of more vehicle manufacturers that have the same question, the same challenges. They want to go electric because, yeah, everyone now knows that, okay, we need to make the transition, but I don't know how. And also, for example, the batteries, it's quite difficult to obtain good batteries for these smaller vehicles, these specific vehicles, such as the bike you see here. So that's also what got us thinking, right, we wanted to not only support this company in making an electric vehicle, but actually all different sorts of vehicle manufacturers to make the transition. And I'm not talking about the Tesla because, of course, they are covered, so to say. They have good batteries, make good vehicles, but it's all other sorts of vehicles that also need to go make the transition into electric vehicles, but don't really know how to do that. So what we basically do is we do our own batteries, design and also production. We can engineer the entire powertrain, the electric powertrain of the vehicles, and we can design entire vehicles. So in that sense, we want to do a full solution. We want to be a full solution provider. So of course, we take the battery cells, which are standardized, and we make sure that these can be converted into a battery pack, into an entire powertrain, and we can also build the entire vehicle for our clients. And if you look a little bit more in these batteries, and this is just to illustrate, it's quite a complex component. So a lot of people think a battery is a battery, but it's not like that. A battery on itself is just a stupid thing that doesn't know when it's empty or when it's full, and when it's hot or when it's cold. So you need to make sure that the battery is perfectly suitable for its specific application. And for cars, yeah, it's quite, like for example, a lot of battery manufacturers only focus on the big car manufacturers, but like I said, there are a lot of other smaller vehicles that also require batteries, which cannot simply use the same batteries as Tesla because you need to configure them in a way that makes them suitable for that application. So that's why we really focused on the flexibility of our battery pack. So we throughout the design process of our batteries, flexibility has been the key focus of us. So we want to make sure that without needing to charge really high cost, we can easily configure the battery to suit its specific application. And as we speak now, the first batteries are being produced. So we actually opened our production facility a few days ago. So exciting times for us. We now made the first batteries on our machines, which will be used in this electric racing buggy that will do a Guinness World Record attempt in the Australian desert to be the fastest vehicle to cross the Australian desert, which is also quite a cool challenge, I would say. And after this buggy, there are some other applications that are waiting for our batteries, and for all these applications, we do the entire solution. So we do not only provide them with batteries, we actually support them in the entire vehicle design. And yeah, so this is what we will do the coming few years. We want to, after the big experience, the big project we did with the electric motorbike, with Spike, we now want to enable all different kinds of electric vehicle manufacturers to make vehicles that really meet their full potential, can last long, and in that way really can make sure that the transition towards electric vehicles happen in a good way. So thanks a lot for your attention. Really enjoyed speaking here for you, and if there are any questions, please come up on the stage. I will stay here. I will more than happy to answer them. Thank you.